Hey guys, just sitting down to do a little Jays talk here. What I'm going to do is go over Ross Atkins' trade history since he's been general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays. Um, in my notes there, I had December 3rd, 2015 as his first day on the job. I believe that's the case. So what I'll do is start with that 2015-16 offseason and move forward. I won't touch on this year's trade deadline because it's just too soon to really know what we got or what we gave up there. Like it's hard to gauge the value that soon, especially when prospects are involved. So I'll leave those ones out for the time being. And then in a future video, I will go into his free agent signings. So let's get started. I've weeded out all of the real non-factor trades, just where, like the Derek Fisher for Aaron Sanchez trade that at the time was sort of noteworthy, but just never really panned out for either side. I've cut most of that stuff out and just going to focus on the more noteworthy events. So 2016, the last year of contention from that 2015-16 window with Donaldson and Batista and them, we acquired Francisco Liriano, and we acquired him with Harold Ramirez and Reese McGuire for Drew Hutchison. So starting off pretty strong there, giving up Drew Hutchison, who was a depth starter, and we got some pretty good value out of Liriano. And even more importantly, you'll see in the next transaction what Liriano became makes him so noteworthy in Ross Atkins' history. That trade, to me, it's, a B. They identified Liriano as a good target. They got him. Harold Ramirez, they were right about, but he never panned out for the Blue Jays. He went on to be a good hitter with the Rays. And maybe, where else did he go? I think he went somewhere else too, but I'm drawing a blank on that actually. But yeah, Harold Ramirez ended up becoming a good average hitter. Reese McGuire, the jokes write themselves, but he's had a semi-productive career. And you'll see in the next transaction, we got good value out of Liriano. So overall, that's a win trade, like a B for Drew Hutchison. July 31st, 2017. So we're starting the teardown at this point. 2017 is kind of the fall off. So yeah, at that trade deadline, from the Houston Astros, we acquire a young left fielder named Teoscar Hernandez, along with Nori Aoki for Francisco Liriano. So that's the cherry on the top for the Francisco Liriano trade right there, because this to me is about as close to an A+ trade as you get. It's at least an A. Being able to get a young Teoscar Hernandez and then use him for, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, up until we obviously moved him. Being able to get all those years of just a good, productive outfielder for the end of the career of Francisco Liriano, that is a very, very strong deal. If we could pull something like that off, or if we did pull something like that off at this deadline, I think we'd all be very excited about that. So yeah, that's like an A to me. That is a very strong trade. The next real noteworthy trade, you have to jump forward to 2019. And now keep in mind, again, these are our dark years in this Jays window, the 2017, 18, 19. Like this is full on tankathon rebuild mode. So there's not a real ton of crazy trades going on here. We didn't have a lot to trade really, and we weren't pushing in for any, playoff runs or anything like that. So it's pretty underwhelming. But we did get, we dealt Marcus Stroman to the Mets, and we got back Simeon Woods Richardson and Anthony Kay. From what I can remember of this time frame, Anthony Kay was more the marquee name here. He was one of the top left-handed prospects, at least in the Mets system, left-hand pitching prospect, that is. And I do seem to remember him being a fairly exciting, MLB ready, AAA guy. You're going to get an impact starter back for Stroman pretty quick. And as it turned out, Simeon Woods Richardson, who was more the lottery ticket in that trade, has now gone on to have success with the Mets. And 5 years later, he's looking like the real steal out of that trade. But given that we got nothing out of Kay, who was the headliner in that deal, and then Richardson, we had to wait a few years to get any value out of in the Barrios trade, giving up your ace for that, I'll give it a C plus. It's an okay trade. You didn't get, totally outdone there. Like I say, you give up your ace, you're expecting to get something good in return. K wasn't it, but there was some redeeming value with Woods Richardson in that deal. So yeah, like a C plus. Not a great trade. Next up, there's actually a string of trades that we've made here at the 2020 deadline. And these are all for starting pitchers. And this, just having a quick look through here, this is some of the more impressive stuff I've seen in Ross Atkins' tenure. So August 27th, 2020, we go in for Taijuan Walker from Seattle for a prospect named Alberto Rodriguez. And Alberto Rodriguez, that name doesn't mean anything to me. I don't think he's even played in the majors. I'd have to look into him. But either way, for what we got out of him, we ended up getting Taijuan Walker, who pitched great for us and ended up parlaying that into a very nice deal with, I believe, the Mets. But he was a very strong starting pitcher for us. So to get him for a single prospect that I don't remember seems like a very strong deal. That's probably like a B deal. Yeah, I'll call that a B deal. Just a very strong deal, not fantastic, but definitely a good deal. And then 4 days later, Robbie Ray comes in from Arizona for $300,000, or with $300,000 for Travis Bergen. Now, I believe Travis Bergen was a reliever for us at that point in time, who was kind of a quadruple A player, if I'm remembering correctly. I haven't actually looked into him. Yeah, from what I recall, he was just kind of a tweener. So I'll give this trade probably about a C plus. Only, so hear me out on this one. I'm only grading it off of what we got in the trade. So we got Robbie Ray for the rest of that season. Pete Walker got to work with him, saw some flashes in him down the stretch there. But we only got to see it for like a month from what I can remember. Again, I'm going off memory with a lot of this stuff, and my memory isn't great. But from what I recall, Robbie Ray came in with the big fastball, was wild. Pete Walker was working with them, kind of started getting him in the zone more, saw some flashes out of him, and then he was a free agent that offseason. So I'm only judging off of those couple of months. So yeah, to me, giving up a reliever for Robbie Ray, probably a C plus to a B. And then, of course, they go on to re-sign Robbie Ray as a free agent that offseason, and he goes on to become a Cy Young winner. So the free agent signing on that is phenomenal. But again, I'll do a future video on these free agency signings. But the trade itself, getting those 2 months of Robbie, or 1 month or whatever it was back then, for Travis Bergen, yeah, it's like a C plus to me. Maybe a B, like I say. That same day, Ross Stripling comes in for Kendall Williams and Ryan Noda. That one, I'm actually probably going to give a higher grade than the Robbie Ray trade. I will probably say, because we had years of control with Stripling in that trade, and we ended up actually seeing those starting pitching years out of him as a result of this trade, that one was probably a B plus to an A again. That's a very strong trade. We got a good reliever in Ross Stripling, who then filled in for an injury the following season, I believe, and was phenomenal as a starting pitcher. For Kendall Williams and Ryan Noda, I believe I recognize the name Ryan Noda. He might be with the Angels or someone like that now, but I'm not sure. Kendall Williams doesn't ring any bells at all. So to get a starting pitcher, a very productive guy for two prospects that I'm unfamiliar with, again, you're pushing an A at that point. You're somewhere at least a B. So again, a strong trade there. Moving into that offseason. So in 2020, if you remember, the Jays were surprising. They were surprised to get into the playoffs. Nobody really saw that coming in the shortened season. So that was kind of their coming out. Like, they were announcing themselves as, okay, we're no longer the baby Blue Jays or the baby Bisons. We were now moving up to the bigs. We had Bo, we had Vlad. We are starting to make a name for ourselves. So that offseason, heading into 2021, the Jays go out and get Steven Matz, again from the New York Mets, this time for Josh Winkowski, Sean Reed-Foley, Yennsy Diaz. Now, I do remember Sean Reed-Foley being one of our top prospects, right-handed pitcher. I believe he had a big fastball and a split finger. if I'm not mistaken. He's gone on to be a reliever. I know he has had a couple of good years as a reliever. And to get Steven Matz, not too bad. I think we only had Matz for the 1 year from what I can remember. It was another, he got to work with Pete Walker, figured some things out as a lefty, and Pete Walker was on a bit of a heater at this point. So we got one really strong season of a starter for a good reliever and prospect in Sean Reed-Foley, and then two other guys that I don't know about. I remember their names, like I remember Josh Winkowski, but I haven't heard of them since, or Yennsy Diaz. I don't think that they've become anything at all. So to get one productive starting pitcher's season for a high-end prospect in Sean Reed-Foley, I again, kind of along the Ross Stripling thing there, I'll give him like a B minus, a B. A good, solid trade. And then obviously Matz went on to parlay his success with us into a bigger deal from, who was it? The Cardinals, I think. So yeah, so far up until this point in January 2021, we have done a good job of acquiring starting pitchers and the Teoscar Hernandez trade. So far, there's no red flags. Everything is pretty good. That's going to continue, actually. I look at this next transaction. July 6th, 2021, so mid-season 2021, when we're starting to go all in. Like, I think in 2021, we had, 91 wins or something like that? Like, we were a good team. So we went and got some bullpen depth in the form of Bowden Francis, as my screen goes to sleep. Yeah, in the form of Bowden Francis and Trevor Richards for Rowdy Tellez. Rowdy Tellez, the fan favorite, didn't do a ton with us, was blocked by Vlad. We didn't have room for him, basically. So to turn him into Trevor Richards, the productive reliever that we had for a few years, and Bowden Francis, who's just now starting to break out, that to me is another one along the lines of a B trade. It's you gave up a first baseman who went on to have some 30 home run seasons, I believe, with Milwaukee, or at least 25. It was a good left-handed power bat that we probably could have used in that time frame, to be honest. And to get a productive reliever, and then Bowden Francis, who, so up until this year, this trade is probably like a C, to be honest. Now that Bowden has broken out and is looking like, a number 3 starter, something like that, now that shifts it up to probably a B for me. And if Bowden becomes the guy that we think he's going to be, then it becomes, an A or an A plus. If he's all of a sudden your ace, like that would be unreal. But as it stands, I won't get overexcited. I'll say it's a B again. A lot of B trades here for me. June 2021. So again, we're pushing all in. We're making some moves to really solidify the roster. I shouldn't say pushing all in, but we're definitely making moves to be competitive. We went out and we got Adam Cimber, Corey Dickerson from the Miami Marlins for Joe Panik and Andrew McInvale. Cimber was a steady presence in the bullpen down that stretch. He put up good numbers for us. He had a good season, or a good half season, I should say. Corey Dickerson, I like Corey Dickerson as a player, or I did. He never really panned out for us. He didn't do a whole lot. Giving up Panik and McInvale, I don't think McInvale's become anything. Panik has had a little bit of success since. We got maybe 1.5 good seasons of a reliever who then fizzled out. I'll give that trade something like a C plus. Got a good reliever for a half year. He wasn't really a guy you could throw in the playoffs, though. He wasn't going to go out there and pitch you any real big innings. He was more of like, don't blow the game up. He'd come in the 6th inning, 7th inning, and not fall apart. That was basically Adam Cimber's role in that point, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I'll give it like a C plus. Then at the end of July of that year, Jose Barrios comes in for Austin Martin and the previously mentioned Simeon Woods Richardson. So this trade to me is a strong trade. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm factoring in the extension that we gave him as well, because if I do remember, Barrios, what did he have? Was he a free agent after that year, or did we have one more year of control? I don't remember how much control we had over Barrios, actually. I will give that trade probably, at the time, it felt like a steep price to pay. Austin Martin, we had just selected, what was it, like 5th overall in the draft. Simeon Woods Richardson at that point had catapulted his way up our ranking board, our prospect ranking board, and was a high-end prospect. So I think we were giving up of our top like 5 prospects for Barrios. Barrios did not pitch that great, especially in 2022 for us, if I remember correctly. 2022 was the down year for him. And then we signed him to the big extension where we gave him 7 years of whatever we ended up giving him, $100 and something million, or maybe around $100 million. I'll give that trade, like most of the starting pitcher trades, it's probably around a B. We went out and acquired the ace, or number 2, and by acquiring him, it opened up the door to being able to extend him the way we did. And luckily for us, Austin Martin hasn't panned out to be as good as some thought he would, and Simeon Woods Richardson is just starting to give the Twins value now. So that is kind of a win-win trade. I like when a trade is win-win. I also like fleecing teams, but I like that we got our ace, and now the Twins are getting SWR out of the deal, and he is starting to really produce for them and looks like a real key piece for them. Austin Martin may still find his way as well. So yeah, I'll give that a solid like a B. The Matt Chapman trade for Gunnar Hoagland, Kevin Smith, Zach Logue, Kirby Snead. Gunnar Hoagland hasn't panned out. Kevin Smith has been a major leaguer, though an inconsequential one. Zach Logue, I recognize the name. I don't know if he's done anything. And Kirby Snead has gone on to become a pretty good reliever over in Oakland. I don't know if he's actually still with Oakland or not now that I think about it, but I know he was a good reliever there. So given that it was 2022, this was right before, it was March 16th, so right before the regular season started, we are pushing all in on this trade. And the fact that we acquired Matt Chapman from Oakland and with a few years of control, and basically all we gave up was a pretty good reliever and then some prospects that didn't pan out at all, that is probably an A to me. We got 22 and 23 out of Chapman, where as polarizing as he was with his strikeouts and everything like that, Gold Glove defense, and he was like a 5 WAR player in that time, and he was affordable because he was still in arbitration. So when you're getting a Gold Glover 5-win player for Kirby Snead, no offense to Kirby Snead, but that feels like a very strong deal. That to me is, an A- deal. And that's probably what I'll give that trade. So we've made it from 2016 to 2022 so far with pretty much, good to really good trades so far. So this, from what I'm seeing so far, is a strong trade record. I will touch on one thing at the end of this video, and that's the trades that aren't made. And that's the trend I'm seeing here as far as Ross Atkins' weakness. Are not so much the moves that are being made, it's what's not happening in these deals. That's probably the problem. But like I said, I'll touch on that at the end. August 2nd, 2022, Mitch White, our fan favorite, acquired from the LA Dodgers for Alex DeJesus and Nick Frasso. Oh, and a Moises Brito. This trade is pretty much an F. If you want to give it something slightly better than that, feel free. Mitch White was not a productive pitcher. I know he was good with the Dodgers before we acquired him. I do remember that fairly vividly. I think he had like a 3.5 ERA pitching out of their bullpen and maybe spot starting. He did not pan out with us at all. He was terrible. Garbage. No offense, Mitch. To give up Nick Frasso, who I haven't checked this season, but I know last season was really on a rocket ship to the top of the prospect rankings, that stings. We lost a young, controllable, very high prospect starting pitcher for Mitch White, who was nothing but a detriment while he was here. So yeah, that is our first real flop. That, to me, is an F. I don't even want to think about that trade anymore, to be honest. Next, we've got November 16th, 2022. So again, off-season heading into 2023. This was when we fell apart and decided to go run prevention, as we all fondly remember. We have traded for Eric Swanson and Adam Mako. How did we acquire them? Teoscar Hernandez. I will use the same logic on this trade that I did on some of the other ones, the Barrios and the Robbie Ray ones specifically, in that I'm only weighing in on what we lost, which was 1 year of Teoscar Hernandez. With that in mind, I will give this trade probably a B. Eric Swanson was a really strong back-end reliever for the Mariners, and in 2023, he was a very strong back-end reliever for the Blue Jays. Mission accomplished. We needed to solidify the bullpen. We needed to not blow 8-1 leads in playoff games, and as fate would have it, kind of the same result, but Eric Swanson was something that we needed and we acquired, along with a high-end pitching prospect in Adam Mako, who is now one of our top pitching prospects from the left side, for 1 year of Teoscar Hernandez. Now, if you'll remember this Teoscar Hernandez year in 2023, it is not what you're seeing on TV right now with the Dodgers. I believe this season was like 26 home runs and 75 RBIs, somewhere around there, and he was like a 108 OPS plus. So he was a good bat, a solid bat, but it was not playoff home run Teoscar that you're now seeing with the Dodgers that's got everybody, romanticizing about what we had. It looked to be a regressing power hitter for 3 years of control of a very stable back-end reliever and a top starting pitching prospect. So in that context, I would give this trade, like I say, probably a B. Now, had we been able to extend Teoscar, all those hypotheticals, this trade, if you give me the option between extending Teoscar and Teoscar going on to do the things that he's doing now for us instead of trading for Eric Swanson, I would take back this trade and give him the contract, whether that was, 5 years, 15 a year, or whatever it was that Teoscar wanted at that point in time. In hindsight, I would go back and undo the trade and extend Teoscar. But in the moment, seeing what they were trying to do, giving up 1 season of Teoscar's 26 home runs for Eric Swanson and Adam Mako, it's a B. And again, I'll touch on the free agent grade that I give in the next video when we discuss not bringing back Teoscar Hernandez after the 23 season. That's a whole different ballgame for me. Okay, Dalton Varsho acquired for Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. I like Dalton Varsho. I'm not upset that we acquired him. That was a very steep price to pay, and I understand that he's a 5-win player. He's got all the potential in the world. Giving up a franchise catcher and Gurriel, 1 year of Gurriel, I need to remember to keep that context in these discussions. That is an overpay to me, and that makes it a C trade. It's not terrible. Like I'm not on the hate wagon for the Dalton Varsho trade. I believe we got a good player who's a valuable piece of a winning team. Platinum Glover in center field with good speed. He bunts. He's a very nice player. I like him. But giving up your number 1 prospect in Gabriel Moreno and your left fielder, who's, not the biggest power bat, but is a good bat, that was an overpay. And in hindsight, that one did sting and cost us some wins, I have to believe. So I will give that a C. That is not a good look from our, what do I want to call it? From our asset management point of view, just having one of the top prospects in all of baseball and Gurriel Jr. and only getting Dalton Varsho, there was probably more enticing things to do with those assets at that time, even if you were going to trade them. July 21st, 2023. So now we've moved into mid-season 2023. And again, this is a playoff push year. This is the year we made the playoffs. Genesis Cabrera acquired from St. Louis for Sammy Hernandez. Genesis Cabrera went on to be really good for us and has gone on to be good again in 2024. So this one to me, I don't know Sammy Hernandez. Now, if he's a prospect, that hasn't given him a lot of time to really turn into anything. He might be something good. I'm unfamiliar with him. I'll give that a C+. Cabrera is not a closer. He's not a setup man, but I feel good with him going in against lefties and pitching, the 6th, 7th inning, and in a pinch, maybe the 8th or 9th. He's solid. He's good. Not great for a prospect that I'm unfamiliar with. C+ trade in my mind. Maybe a B-. Jordan Hicks at the same deadline for Adam Kloffenstein and Sem Roberts. Again, I'm going to be a little bit critical of this trade because we only had a couple months of him and we gave up 2 top pitching prospects in a system that did not have a lot of starting pitching depth at this point in time. That is probably a C trade to me. Hicks pitched all right. We were making a playoff push. He served his purpose. We ultimately came up short in the playoffs. He didn't play a huge role in that. He did help down the stretch pitching some tight innings. But to give up Kloffenstein and Roberts probably makes it a C. You're giving up 2 guys that are going to be big league factors for a couple months of a reliever. You've got to pay up to get things you like. I understand that. To get good players, you got to give good players. So I'm not mad about it. I understand the thought process, but it is a lot to give up when you're unable to re-sign Jordan Hicks that offseason. So for me, that's a C. And then one that actually just kind of flew under my radar the first time I looked through these transactions, Brendan Little. We got him from the Cubs for cash considerations, November 2023. So, Brendan Little went on to become a regular in our bullpen this year from the left side and appears to have a spot moving forward. Plus, we have years of control for cash considerations. That puts us back up in the B tier, I would say, because you're getting I'll call him an everyday contributor from a bullpen perspective. Obviously, he's not an everyday player, but he is a regular in the bullpen and he will fill one of our spots this year. I'm pretty sure about it. So to get him for cash considerations, very sturdy like that, it's really hard to find a complaint in that. That's very nitpicky if I had any complaints whatsoever with that. So just recapping briefly, all of those trades basically up until from 2016 through, the Matt Chapman trade at the start, just before the 22 season, all of those were really strong for me. Like they were all B's and things like that. Like they were no real complaints there. Then end of 22 is when we get into the run prevention and the shift in the front office. And that's when you see the Mitch White, the Eric Swanson deal, the Dalton Varsho deal. Those are probably the most iffy, even if I don't hate them. The Varsho and the Swanson deal, that's where the shift has been made away from offense. And that's when things, at least in hindsight, start to get iffy for us. Then we kind of rebound with the Genesis Cabrera. Again, that's a solid trade. I like that one. And then fall off again with the Jordan Hicks, giving up 2 higher end pitching prospects who are likely to be starters or at least relievers in the bigs in the future and look to be, real guys, not just, not just journeymen. They appear to be actual guys in Roberts and Kloffenstein. So that is a steep price to pay for a couple months of a guy that you're unable to re-sign. So yeah, all in all, I don't want to put a letter grade on Ross Atkins' overall performance, but the trades he did make all appear quite good, and I am leaning towards a lot of those being, B's, C+, B+. The trades he did make are quite good. Now, to touch on his main drawback to me is what we don't see on this list, and that is him going out and acquiring hitters. There is basically, other than the Teoscar Hernandez in 2017, getting a prospect named Teoscar Hernandez, there is no acquiring of a real legit hitter. He went after Matt Chapman largely for his defense, had a bit of pop. We're all familiar with Matt Chapman. He's a good ball player. But that is it in win now years. So in 2020, 21, 22, 23, and into 24, we needed bats. We needed help. I know we did some free agent stuff, like around Marcus Semien and that, but there was still more moves that could have been made in those seasons. 22, am I viewing that correctly? 21, we had Semien, so we probably, okay, sorry, that year we probably didn't need help, to be honest. That year we definitely had some thumping. 22, we had thump, but it wasn't enough, and there were no moves made that year with starters or relievers to kind of push us over the top in that instance. And then 23, we knew the offense was going to take a step back, but it really took a step back. So not going out and getting anybody at that deadline, and instead getting Cabrera, Hicks, and that's it for that deadline. Instead of getting any power bats or any hitters at all, we got Hicks and Cabrera in the bullpen. Not enough. That offseason, getting Brendan Little through trade, and again, no real hitters coming into this season through trade. That, to me, has been the real failure of Ross Atkins, is unable to pull the trigger to acquire bats. Yeah, I'm just getting depressed even just looking at some of these names here, because we had so much going for us. And had we been a little bit less gun shy and a little bit less focused on the run prevention in 23 and even in 24, what could have been, I know we don't like to live in the past, but if he had been willing to go out and get a Brent Rooker or like somebody along those lines, obviously Brent Rooker is reaching for the stars at this point, but if he were able to make a trade and push all in on the hitting side of things, things could have been a lot different. So to me, that is definitely his biggest failure so far, is those trades that he has not made, specifically in the last 2 years where we're in a win now mode and not correcting the over adjustment we made to run prevention. Anyways, that's my thought for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for stopping by.